What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Doubted Podcast. With this being our first actual podcast with a guest, we wanted to hit you with a bang. I've got one of my good friends here with me. Let me just read you a stat line right quick. 2006 U.S. Junior National Team Silver Medalist, 2007 Virginia Gatorade Player of the Year, 2007 AFLAC All-American, 2007 first-round MLB draft pick, 2013 MILB midseason postseason All-Star, 2014 MLB debut, 1.44 rookie season ERA, played for 7 MLB teams, played for 10 MLB organizations in total, member of the 2016 World Series Championship Cubs, 16-year professional career, 4 years and 82 days in the MLB service time. Just wanted to welcome Neil Ramirez.
How's it going, guys? Look, I'm honored to be the first guest, obviously. Real excited to be here, and I know this is something you've been wanting to kind of get rolling for a while, so I'm pumped that you got this thing going, man. And I just say, Neil Ramirez, obviously I've been friends with Dustin now for a few years. I think we first met, it would have been probably like 2012 or something.
12 or 13, yeah.
Yeah, you were
when you came over.
Yeah, I think you were over in a facility near where my wife grew up in Longview.
Yeah, Longview, yeah.
Yeah. So, man, I'm excited to be here. I was fortunate and blessed to play for a long time, and it was a long career, and with the Doubted Athletes thing, man, I think it kind of embodies a little bit of what my career was. I think, a lot of ups and downs, probably
for sure,
probably some doubts along the way. Yeah. But I'm 35 now. I was drafted at 17 years old, so played ever since. Married with 2 kids, my wife Tiffany, my 2 kids Riley and Luke. We live here locally now. Lived in Nashville for a while. Grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia. That's where I came up. Rec ball all the way through, to high school. But yeah.
Yeah. So we're super stoked to hear his story. That's really what we want to talk about. We just want you to tell your story. And obviously there'll be questions in between, but we want you to tell your story, all the ups and downs. We feel like your story in some way, shape, or form will help someone across the world. So that's kind of where we want to go.
Yeah, so I kind of came up like every other little kid, man. Kempsville Rec Center was the name of the rec center there back home. A lot of kids start out 4 or 5 years old. And that was a long time ago, so I can't remember, all the details, but I know I started young, right around that age, playing. And my mom was actually the one who kind of got me into baseball. I think she was the one that was her idea to get us signed up. And she was a 3-sport athlete in the family. So she was volleyball, field hockey, and I think softball. So, she was the athlete. And so started out, rec ball. Then you go into what was called Kempsville Pony Baseball. I don't know if they had that.
We have some stuff like that.
But it was called Pony Baseball back then. And, that was so long ago now. But you had different levels of it. But I came up through that. Travel ball wasn't as big as it is now. But, right around that 10-year-old mark, that's when I started with something called Amateur Athletic Union, AAU.
AAU.
Yeah,
yep.
So again, I don't know if that's a thing anymore.
I don't even know if it's still around. Yeah. I really don't. We don't play it.
But I was traveling. We would go down to Florida. We went to East Cobb, Marietta, areas like that. And I obviously had a good arm, ever since I was a little man. And I kind of, they didn't have the facilities and all that kind of stuff they have nowadays. So you kind of just develop naturally, so to speak. I wasn't doing velocity programs at, 5 or anything like that.
Yeah.
The other sport I loved was basketball. I was a basketball guy, man. That's what I did. And so it was baseball in the summer, basketball in the winter. And once I got into, middle school, high school, man, I know there was a showcase thing that I did, with a guy that was local. He was a local high school coach, and David Wright, Zimmerman, the Upton brothers, few big name guys that had some really good careers. They were all on it. And so once I got into high school, I got onto that team. And we traveled like, colleges and things like that, and there'd be scouts. And so that's how I remember it, like getting out into like the actual like national, rankings and perfect game, stuff like that. I know I was invited to like a perfect game showcase, and I grew up middle class, man. We didn't have a ton of money. We weren't poor, but they actually sponsored it, because my parents were like, man, I don't know if we can afford it or
it's
not.
expensive.
Yeah, it starts getting expensive. And I mean, they definitely spent a lot of money on the travel ball stuff growing up. So I'm appreciative of it.
I think it's changed dramatically since then. I mean, obviously I'm the same age as you. So like, we had the AAU, we traveled a lot, but now I feel like, you're just now getting back into the lessons and all that stuff. And you're going to start seeing it with some of our teams helping some there too. But I think that, there's so many teams now. Like back when we played, there was your top athletes played on the same team.
Right.
Like me, Baumgartner, Patrick, we all played on the same travel team. Now it's like, Baumgartner would be on this team, I would be on this team, and it kind of, it's not as high quality baseball until you go to like the Floridas and the Georgias and the stuff like that.
Yeah, it's wild how much has changed, man. And like I said, these facilities that pop up now, and I was at Tread Athletics in Charlotte when I got injured in 21 doing, some rehab stuff with them. But I mean, you see kids that are in there so young, and I'm like, gosh, man, it's crazy how it's changed so much. But anyways, I mean, back to the story, once I got on that showcase team, that's kind of when like the national, ranking thing started. I remember going into, I think it was either sophomore or junior year. It's been so long ago now, man. But I did a perfect game showcase, and I came back, and my mom was like on the internet, like looking it up, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, you're like the third ranked player in the country or something like that." And I was like, "What?" It was just like one of those things where you had no idea.
Yeah.
And I mean, dude, I didn't throw to a radar gun until that showcase.
Yeah, you lit it
up. I mean,
though.
now it's like you go to these facilities and every kid's throwing a radar gun every throw they make.
Yeah.
But I was like, I had no idea how hard I threw. I mean, I knew I threw hard because I was blowing it by guys.
Yeah.
Just the hitter reaction, but I didn't have any idea how hard I was throwing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so I think it was my sophomore or junior year. It was like I said, I came back and I saw that online. I was like throwing 93. And I was like, oh my gosh,
That's hard for that age.
For that age, yeah.
Were you still the same height back then?
Yeah. I mean, I was growing still, but I think I maxed out around senior year,
Yeah.
But so, then, senior year rolls around, man. And I'll backstep that a little bit. So going into my senior year, one of the funnest things I remember doing in high school, outside of any of the showcase stuff, was I got the tryout for the USA baseball team. And that's when it was still in Joplin, Missouri. And I mean, that was a blast. So you actually had to go to Joplin. It was like the pre-trial thing. You have to, you're put on a team, and you got to perform well. It's like it doesn't matter what your name is.
Yeah.
They want guys that are going to be on the team helping them win, and they were going to go to Cuba for that tournament. And so you go to Joplin, you try it out. I made it through there. Then it was in the Atlanta area after that. I remember we were at like Georgia Tech, Georgia, a couple of those fields. And again, you gotta perform. And so I ended up making the team. And then going into my senior year, that was junior summer. Going into senior year, we went to Cuba. And I got to go to Cuba on the USA Junior National Team I remember there was a guy named Michael Maine on the team. Mike Moustakis was on the team. Freddie Freeman was on the team. We had a good squad.
Yes.
I mean, we started out, we didn't play as well as we should have with the team that we had. And so I remember going into the game against Canada, and we had to win that game or we were going home. And so I got to pitch that game, and I went 5 innings and shoved. And so that was like, and then I got to pitch against Mexico after that. So I had 2 or 3 outings in that little tournament. We ended up getting second place. I think we lost to Korea in the finals, but we beat Cuba in Cuba, and that was a wild game. Yeah. So it was the atmosphere was nuts. And then, after senior year, I got drafted. I was, fortunate to get drafted first round by the Texas Rangers. Was with them for about 6 years in the minor leagues. I mean, it was back then. It wasn't as guys didn't get rushed to the minor leagues as much, especially as a high school starter. You kind of had to hit each level and prove that you could, do it at each level before they would move you up. And so,
how was your recruiting? Because you committed to
Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
How was your for people watching? I know you took a fast route as far as like getting drafted, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But like, how was your recruiting? And I know it's changed obviously dramatically with the portal and all this stuff.
I have no idea how it works.
So me either. It's that crazy.
Yeah.
And so how was your recruiting? Did you get a lot of calls? What was your decision? Like, why did you make the decision? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember getting a lot of calls, like when, there was a time period when they were finally like allowed to call you.
Things like, I can't remember.
And I remember like, I was on the phone like all day, At that time, I was a good student, and I cared about school. My mom really wanted me to go to school. But I knew I wanted to go play, and we kind of had it at that time. I had met with some financial advisors and things like that, agents, because that was kind of when it was starting to go pretty hot and heavy, with the pro ball stuff too. And so there was kind of like a number
they had to hit.
Like, if I get this number, like, I'm going to go play.
Life changing money. You can do something with it.
If I don't, then I'm going to go to school. The thing I did. It's not that I didn't want to go to school, but what I didn't want to have happen, and what I was worried about at the time, is like, I go to school, something happens, I get hurt, and I don't ever get that chance.
You don't get that money because NILs wasn't around then.
No, NIL was definitely not around.
So kids right now are making
it's wild.
$100,000. Normal kids making $100,000 at Georgia Tech.
Yeah, and I don't know how baseball is on the NIL stuff, but I know these basketball and football guys are getting paid.
Yeah, baseball guys are getting paid too.
Yeah,
they are.
So, anyways, that was the decision for me. If I knew I had to be financially, in a pretty good spot coming out of it if I didn't go. And then as far as choosing Georgia Tech, I just had a good relationship with the guys that were the coaches back then. A couple of my buddies had committed there. It was really between like 3 or 4 ACC schools, like UVA, UNC was there. My high school pitching coach went to UNC Wesleyan when Fox was the head coach at UNC Wesleyan, so
Before
he kind of had a connection to Carolina. Even though I can't stand Carolina, Duke fan. But,
no, me too.
But they had some dudes committed there, man. They had Bumgarner was already committed there.
Oh yeah,
Harvey, Porcello. So I figured most of those guys weren't going to go to school anyways.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know if I want to go there and kind of just be lost in that shuffle. Not that I don't believe in myself, but they're like, Georgia Tech, you're going to be the Friday night guy, and I just had a good relationship with the guys that were the coaches there. And so that's why I chose them.
So one more question, you can start getting into your story more. But
yeah,
another thing that I think a lot of kids get caught up in is and I was the same way, the number of what they got to get, or do they just want to go? Do they just want to go? Like, do you want to get $200,000 and go, and then not go to college? I think there's different reasons there. I think, and obviously people are going to disagree and agree, but I feel like an arm is a little different than a middle infielder.
Right.
Like, I feel like you could possibly get hurt in college.
Yeah.
And never get that opportunity, especially if you're a high rounder, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But an infielder, I feel like if you're a middle rounder, I just feel like to get that college atmosphere, playing and all of that, because you're going to get the pro ball, and it's not just you. There's people from everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. As a high school arm, I think if you look at the statistics on high school guys specifically, I don't think a lot of those guys end up making it to the big leagues.
Yeah.
I think it's just a tougher route. The one advantage I will say with college, I think, looking back on it now, is those guys go into not even D1 anymore, but D2, D3 program. You're on a consistent, strength training program.
That you never had in high school.
Dialed in. And so you're getting stronger. I saw it with guys like a buddy of mine, Daniel Hudson. I didn't know Verlander personally, but I saw him at ODU, and he was from my area too, at Richmond. He grew up in the Richmond area, but the story is, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I believe it, from a certain point, he didn't throw 98 in high school, but he went to college, got bigger, got stronger, and the next thing you know, he's throwing 96, 98 miles an hour. Yeah. So I think the one advantage for pitchers going into college is that aspect of it. But the other flip side of that is pro ball teams, they're invested in you getting to the big leagues. They don't care about you being in the minor leagues. They are picking you so that you will be on their big league team, helping them to win world championships. Yep. So they're going to take care of you in the minor leagues, and try to progress you the right way. I'm not saying colleges don't, but at the end of the day, like, those college coaches want to win. That's their job.
They get paid to win.
In pro ball, it's not as much about winning at the minor league level. Like, it should be to a certain extent, because you want to teach guys how to win and how to be competitive. But the goal is to get to the big leagues. So, and I knew as a first round draft pick when I got drafted, like, they were going to make sure that I was progressed the right way to get to the big leagues. And, you know, like I said, I got enough money to where I felt comfortable going. Like if something happened, whatever it is, like I'm still at a pretty good starting point in life. And so that's why, for me, that's why I went, you know.
So you got drafted.
Yeah.
And then?
Yeah, 6 years, 6 years in the minor leagues with the Rangers. Hit every level, man. I was all the way through AAA. We can go into the weeds on some of the stuff, but I was hurt quite a bit early on. I think, like we kind of talked about, you know, going into college and getting that strength training program. I think I wasn't ready for the workload, because you go from pitching 1 day a week in high school to now pitching every 5 days.
Yep.
And that's a big adjustment. And you're throwing bullpens in between then. You know, it's like in high school, I was throwing that game, you know, Friday, whatever it was, and then I'm playing a different position the rest of the week.
Yep.
You know, and I mean, I think I was throwing bullpens, but it wasn't like it is in pro ball.
Yeah, you mix in a bullpen there.
So my shoulder started kind of being an issue early on for me. And so I got to 2011, I kind of was finally on a roll. Pitched really well in spring training, ended up getting into some big league games. And so I started out that year in high A. So this was 2011, high A Myrtle Beach. Was pumped about being in Myrtle Beach.
Yep.
And then I made one start, pitched well, and a guy in our AAA organization, Trevor Hurley was his name, great guy. He took a line drive to the head and was out.
So you got the call up.
So, usually they're going to call somebody from AA.
Yeah.
But I had been throwing so well that I got the call from, and I guess it just kind of matched up where my day would be on that day where he was supposed to pitch too. And so they called me up. And it was initially supposed to be a spot start, but then I just dealt.
Yeah.
I dealt. And I pitched the first game I pitched against the Royals AAA affiliate, which was like their World Series team. It was like Lorenzo Cain, Moustakis, Hosmer. So they had a squad, dude. Their AAA team was stacked that year. And I shoved. I think I went like 6 innings, struck out like 10.
That's a perfect example of when you get the opportunity.
Yeah,
make it happen.
Right. Well, I had some good momentum, man. I was rolling through the spring in a pretty good clip and stuff. So I didn't try to change anything. I just went up there and was like, you know what, here it comes. You know, and throughout my career, when I look back at the times, you know, where I pitched well, it's usually the attitude you have is like, I'm coming at you.
Here it comes.
You know? And it's easier said than done, but you know, I've since since I've officially retired, you know, like I said this year, I've had some time to kind of look back at my career, and the one thing that stands out to me the most as far as success versus not success, it was never the physical stuff. Obviously healthy, like, you know, health is an issue. You want to be healthy as much as possible, obviously, but it was the mental side, man. It's that those little seeds of doubt that come in at times. You know, you're doubting your stuff or whatever, overthinking mechanics, whatever it may be. And that's like when I look back, I'm like, man, like it goes by so fast. You know, the career is like, it's such a short window of time. It's like, I wish at times, I just wish like I would have had that same mentality every time out, you know? And so I think that's, you know, and that's, you know, when you guys started this company, the Doubted Athletes thing, I think a lot of that piece of that Doubted Athletes thing is that mentality of like, you're going out there every single time with the mentality that you're going to win and that you're going to compete to the best of your ability, regardless of whether or not you're doubted, you know? And so I look back on it a little bit and I'm like, man, I wish I just had that mentality the whole time. Because when I had that mentality, man, I was pretty good.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so 2011, that was a good year for me. I was in AAA. And then 2012, man, I came in, was supposed to be like ready to go. Because I ended up getting shut down at the end of 2011 with the shoulder thing. I was going to be a call-up that year, September call-up, but they shut me down. And so 2012, I came in, and it was like, you're the guy. Like, if something happens to somebody in the big league level, like, you're there. And I stunk. I went back to AAA. For whatever reason, man, my velo was down. I think some of the pressure got to me a little bit. So I ended up getting demoted back to AA that year, about halfway through. And so that was kind of like the first real big like mental struggle for me, was that year, 2012. Was able to kind of clear it, went into the off season, got into a guy in Nashville, Tennessee named Lance Wheeler, was working with him on some mechanical stuff. And also on the mental side, I was trying to really work on like visualization, self-talk, you know, kind of all that stuff. Cause I had lost some of that, you know, after the 2011 season. And so 2013, I went back to AA. started the year there, and it was my best year in the minor leagues. I was a midseason all-star, postseason all-star, led the Texas League in strikeouts. Then I ended up getting traded to the Cubs that year at the end of the year. And then 2014 rolled around, and I made my debut with the Cubs. So, and then
That's pretty sick.
about 6 or 7 years later, here we are.
Now, your debut, talk about your debut. How crazy was that?
Debut, man, that's the one moment every athlete, every MLB guy remembers. It's something you've obviously worked for your whole life for. And I had gotten called up with the Cubs. I started the year in Iowa, which was their AAA. So it was about April. I think this was end of April 24th maybe, or something like that. So this is 2014. I dominated in spring training. And so I was a starter in the minor leagues. And then the Cubs, I came into spring training, and the Cubs wanted me to see, how the reliever role would go. I think they were kind of worried about some of the shoulder, stuff that I had dealt with. But yeah, that's another story too. Looking back on that, I wish I never would have made that switch. But anyway, so I was like, all right, because at that time I was like, man, I'd been in the minor leagues for a while. Yeah, it's like I want to get to the big leagues, and they're like, their rotation, I guess, was kind of set. And it wasn't something where it's like, we're not ever going to try you out as a starter again, but they're like, we want you to kind of see how this role goes. So I was like, all right. So I kind of embraced that mentality, that reliever mentality, and I didn't give up a run all spring. Pitched 8 or 9 innings, and they were like, okay, like, be ready, And so I went down to AAA. I was kind of upset I didn't make the team because I was like, man, what else do I got to do? You know? So I went down there and pitched well, and then they called me up, and I ended up making my debut in Milwaukee. We were in Chicago the day before, and it was like snowing, so I was kind of glad I didn't pitch that day. Milwaukee Indoor Stadium, so I was all right, better environment,
better climate,
And so I think we were losing the game by like 2 or something like that. I think it was either 7th or 8th inning. It's hard to remember the exact details now, but it was. I know it was later in the game and we were losing. And so I get the call, hey, get Ramirez going. And it's like you stand up and you're like, oh boy.
That gives me chills just thinking about it. Yeah.
I mean, it's like one of those moments where you're walking and you're like, feel like you're floating and like you don't really have like complete control of your legs.
Body. Yeah.
And so, I mean, when I was getting loose to go into games, I would kind of like rip the first couple out of like a crow hop. And I remember the first ball I threw just went almost up into the stands. And everybody was kind of like laughing, and I was like, oh boy, lock it in. I was like, through his chest. And so, I felt good. I was ready, but it's just, man, it's a moment that you don't know how to describe until you're in it, Yeah. And so, that inning came around and you run out there, man. It's like, you feel like you're just floating, It's like almost like you don't have control of your body. And I get on the mound, man. My first batter was Ryan Braun.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and struck him out on a high fastball, and I think actually there was one out, and so I think I came in after somebody had started the inning, so I got him out, struck him out, and then I got he was an outfielder for them. He had a good little career too. I forget his name, but he hit a fly ball to left field, and so that was it. So they eased me in there a little bit.
Good,
so it was a little 2-out outing,
Yeah, that's good.
But it was good, man. It was all. I mean, it was everything that you hear from guys, man, talking about their debuts. It was pretty sweet.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So then you got traded again, right?
Well, so the merry-go-round started in 2016.
Because when I say merry-go-round,
I mean the designations.
Yeah.
So when you get designated for assignment off a big league roster, it's basically saying like, hey, we don't need your services anymore.
Yeah.
And so I was designated for assignment by the Cubs in 2016.
Okay.
In May of that year.
Yeah.
And so then it was kind of, I bounced around for a little bit. I mean, I always tell people, if you look up the definition of journeyman in the dictionary, you'll see my face.
That's funny. That's funny.
Because the 2016 through 2020, I was bouncing around a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
And then they won the World Series.
Yeah, so 16, obviously the Cubs won it. It was bittersweet because I was a part of the organization for a couple years and had kind of been a part of like the turnaround, because they went 2014 we weren't good, and then they brought Madden in 2015 as the manager, got John Lester, a few other guys, and ended up. I mean, we went to the playoffs that year too. Yeah, didn't get it done, but in 16 we started out good, man, and I dealt with some injuries in 2015, shoulder again, missed a lot of time on the roster that year. So it wasn't the best case scenario for me coming into 2015, especially after the year I had in 2014 as a rookie. I mean, I had really set myself up as like the 8th inning guy, and I think they had some really high hopes for me. And unfortunately, like I said, the injuries happened. And so 2016 started. I wasn't pitching bad, but I wasn't dominating. It's not like I was solidifying myself as a guy that they just couldn't get rid of. And so unfortunately in May of that year, I got designated for assignment. And so basically what happens is they take you off their 40-man and then other teams can claim you. So I ended up getting claimed by Milwaukee, was only there for a little bit and then got designated again. But anyways, I didn't know this, but like if you're on the roster at any point in time, so you could be in AAA, get called up for one day, and then get sent back down and never come up again. If you're on that roster for one day, the year that the team wins the World Series, you get a ring. So I didn't know that, and so I think the next year I was in AAA with like the Nationals or something like that. And so I walk in one day and I have this box in my locker, and I open it and I was like, oh my gosh, there it is.
Yeah, this thing is pretty. It looks good on my finger too.
Yeah, it does. Oh yeah,
pretty good shot right there. That's pretty. Cool.
I'm proud of it. It's like I said, it's kind of bittersweet because you wish that you were like on the actual squad
to run out
through. And kind of like my mentality. If I don't feel like I earned something, but it's in my safe at home, man. It's downstairs. I don't really bust it out much, but
I told you to bring it. I was like, I want to see.
He told me to bring it.
I want to see it.
But no, it's cool, man. I'm proud of it. Like I said, it's hard for me at times because I'm like, man, I wasn't a part of it the whole way through. But it's still
really cool. Yeah. So now you've retired.
Yeah.
And you're starting to do some lessons with us and starting to get into some of that stuff up in Boone and here in Newton. And what's your goals? What's your plans going forward?
Well, every athlete comes to a point in time where the playing days are over, right? You got to take the cleats off.
Yep.
And, I grinded for a long time. I had shoulder surgery in 2021. Wasn't with the team. Had an agency that I thought had my back, and then you never hear from them again. Yeah. So it was a tough time for me, man. But I was in spring training in 2020 when the world shut down with the Angels, and that was tough because I really needed 2020 after the few years that I'd had bouncing around to go out there and prove myself again. And I just didn't get that chance as did like a ton of guys. I'm not unique into that story. There's a lot of guys that didn't get that chance. But so 2021, I had shoulder surgery, wasn't with a team, knew it was going to be a hard road back, ended up having 12 anchors put into my labrum, which I pitched through for a long time. Probably something I should have had fixed earlier on in my career, but I just didn't want to. I felt like I could get through it. And so anyways, I had the surgery and then spent 2 years rehabbing, basically 2 years before I was even back able to pitch, at what I felt was a competitive level. And so the last couple of years here, I was on an independent ball team in High Point. And that's not the glamorous life, man. So, the time came for me, like I said, I have a family now and stuff. And so I knew I had to get into whatever was next. And I think my passion has always been, the training side of the game, the mental side of the game, the nutritional side of it, just what it takes to take care of your body, take care of your mind, all the things, that get guys to that next level. And so what I want to do is I want to use the experiences, the lessons I've learned, the knowledge I have just from talking to some incredibly smart people in the game, being around some of the best players in the game, and help the next generation, get to that level that I was at and give back. It's like you had your time and now it's time to like give back to, the younger generation. And I want to do it in a way that's holistic, that encompasses, like I said, the training aspect, the recovery aspect, the nutritional aspect, and the mindset, man. The mindset, I think, is so important for young kids. It's something that doesn't get talked about a lot. It doesn't get trained a lot. And look, there's guys that are just super, super confident. And we all know those guys, and they don't ever seem to let things bother them. But that's not everybody. It wasn't my story. And so I can kind of sympathize with those guys that might have some mental struggles and things like that. And so that's another aspect of the training stuff that I want to really incorporate with guys, like during lessons. And as I get more into this world, if it's designing programs for guys, kind of like the model that you see online now with everybody. It's like monthly programming, things like that. And so I have to grow in my knowledge of how the body works, how the body moves. I want to get more kind of well versed in that, and then on top of that, add the mental side, the nutritional side, and the training. You know, so
that's
and doing that with you guys. I mean, I really appreciate you guys, like I said, having me on and giving me a place to kind of start this journey.
Yeah, for sure. We gotta get your social media.
Because I'm starting the journey.
we gotta work on this social media.
Yeah, man, social media. It's not going anywhere. I realize that. I've never been a guy. I'm more of the behind the scenes kind of guy, and all my friends will tell you the same thing. But I want to put content out there that's going to help guys get better.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think kind of part of that is just getting over the fear of like, what people think about you.
Yeah, we've had to do that multiple times. Yeah, it's like, man, just post it.
It's just that world, man. And
You're
that's
gonna have
part of
haters.
what makes me not like it.
Yeah.
But I think the educational piece of it, because I consume information on social media all the time. I'm following guys that I really trust and I like. And so there's so much good information on there, and I want to be a part of that positive side of it to where it's like I'm putting stuff out there that guys are going to actually be able to use and get better.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a huge thing going forward in today's society is, like you said, the mental side is crazy. Like it's the hardest thing. Like you're in the big leagues or you're in the minors, you're good.
Yeah.
Now it's can you go through the ups and downs? Are you going to shut down? When I was there, that was the hardest thing for me. I mean, it was like, you play good one day and then the next day it's like you're not playing. I'm like, what?
Well, so like when you were in the minor leagues with the Cubs, did they have any kind of mental training for you guys?
They had a guy, but it wasn't really like go do it.
Right.
Like it was just a guy that walked around and says, "Hey, you want to talk?"
Yeah.
No, I really don't want to talk, man. I want to go out here and play.
Well, I think it used to kind of be seen as a weakness.
It did.
So guys didn't really want to be seen talking
did.
with that
Now
guy,
it's a
but they're
big
like,
thing.
Oh,
He's got a mental problem. Like, why is he talking to that guy?
Well, I didn't really think about it until I got to the big leagues.
Yeah.
And then I started having some conversations with these people, and I'm like, man, these guys they're smart people, and they want to help you out if you're willing to kind of give them the time and let them help you. But so for me, that's a big part of what I would like to get into is incorporating like building good habits, not just physical habits, but also mental habits for guys, because the baseball is such a failure game. I mean, it's literally, you hear the cliche, man, 3 times out of 10 as a hitter, you're a Hall of Famer.
Exactly.
3 times out of 10, that's 7 times. Now, if you're hitting, the ball hard, it's a little bit hard, it's a little bit easier to deal with that. But 3 times out of 10 in most professions is not going to be a good outcome for you, you know? No. And so there's so much of that built into the game. And I think there's ways that you can train that within a practice setting to set you up to kind of be able to deal with it more, when the lights are on.
Well, I got 2 more and then we'll kind of wrap this thing up. We've kind of hit on this a little bit with the different age groups of how you would train. Like, what would be your thing? And we never want to burn kids out. I'm a firm believer in play as many sports as you want to play. When I went to ECU, they recruited me because I was an athlete, right? I played football, basketball, and baseball, right? So it wasn't like I was just a one-dimensional sports guy, which is no problem. There's a lot of guys that are dominate at one sport. I just like playing other sports because I like competition. I like competition. I want to be in competition.
Well, I think there's such a big piece of that for younger kids in general is just they need a break. I think just, to prevent burnout, these kids just need to have another avenue to like go into.
Get away from it.
And like you said, I think it just builds athleticism. I think your body awareness, your footwork, whatever it may be, like there's ways that other sports train that outside of just being so baseball specific all the time.
I agree. So as far as like different age groups, when they're let's say elementary, then we'll say middle school, then we'll say high school.
Right.
How does that ramp up? Like, what would be your mindset as far as the age group wise?
Yeah, I'm definitely not an expert in this. And like I said, I'm trying to kind of learn more as I get into this space. But as far as like training goes, like for younger kids, I think learning how to control your body. So, balance work, footwork type stuff, medicine ball work, like just learning how to rotate, because pitching and hitting is obviously rotational. And I think, we can kind of, like I said, get into the weeds a little bit more with like real specific stuff. But I think learning how to rotate for kids is so huge, especially at an early age. And I don't think weight training really has to be a part of that necessarily.
At that young age, yeah.
Yeah, maybe not at the youngest age, but I don't think there's anything wrong with like body weight exercises, like push-ups, pull-ups, even some squatting and lunging patterns, like things like that, where they're doing things that they're naturally doing every day anyways, and just slowly starting to add some load to those things. And it's got to be progressive, right? I mean, it's just like anything. You got to start at a certain point and just build over time. But I think if you build good habits with kids moving well and setting things up in their training and their throwing to where they're kind of having to solve some problems within the context of the throw. And I think, and I could be wrong on this, but I think some of that's, there's a certain term for it where it's constraints. Like you're putting them in a position where they have to kind of solve some problems within that. So they're not having to actually think as much, but they're just reacting,
I agree.
And they're learning to kind of feel things out on their own. Because I mean, as somebody who's getting into this instruction, space and wants to be a good coach and help kids get better and not just, cookie cutter it for everybody. I think, each kid is so individual with how they move, and each kid is so individual, like where they're at strength wise. So you kind of have to be good at identifying what they really need to focus on. And I think a lot of times you can get so caught up on, weighted balls and all these things, but a lot of times kids just need to throw more and they need to just get stronger.
Yeah. And every kid's different. I mean, you might work with one kid on something. I do it with hitting all the time. Like,
right.
We've got our main points.
Yep.
But getting to those main points, I mean, you got Sheffield that was wiggle, and then he got back to his point. You got
right.
I mean,
stylistically, guys are so different.
Yeah.
But the principles are the same.
I agree.
Right. There's certain principles that are there, and each kid's gonna have their own style. But like I said, as far as training goes, man, like I think the younger kids they need to get more aware of their body. I mean, when I'm doing a lesson with a kid, like even in like the dynamic warm up, I call it, we're doing like some lunging, some rotating stuff to where they're kind of getting their thoracic spine moving. They're, and you're making it fun. Like they're not actually thinking about what's actually happening, but you're setting it up to where they're getting some mobility work, they're getting some strength work, they're building awareness of their body, they're learning how to rotate, they're learning how to move down the mound. And then, as they get more developed physically, you get into middle school, high school, then it's like you can kind of, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying young kids can't train, but I think, middle school, high school age, then we can start getting in the gym, and safely putting some load to where, they're getting stronger, they're physically getting stronger, they're able to handle the workloads. Because I think injuries happen, man, when the body's just not prepared to handle the workload that it's asked to do. And so that's where, throwing matters, getting their arms built up matters, doing the little things post throwing matters, warming up the right way. And so a lot of that's, what I would like to incorporate with guys is just, making sure guys are warming up right, make sure they're cooling down right.
Prepared.
Yeah, prepared. Prepare your body to throw. I mean, hitting a baseball, throwing a baseball, they're physically demanding tasks. And so the body's got to be ready for them,
Last question, I think, is a big one to everybody.
Yeah.
Who do you surround yourself around? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the people you surround yourself around when you're training and when you're going through your daily life is a huge thing.
Yeah, I think, you have to be around people who are striving to get better every single day. When I was playing in, the early part of my career and I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, I was around a group of guys consistently that were pushing me and weren't afraid to tell me what I needed to hear. I think that's a big piece of it is being around guys who are going to tell you what you need to hear and that are pushing you. And, I mean, we were cutting up all the time, but when it came time to work, we worked, and nobody wanted to be that guy that was, last in the sprint or, was the worst one in the conditioning drill, whatever it was, you know what I'm saying? Or threw the slowest in the pull downs.
Yeah.
That's that competition aspect, that healthy competition aspect. And people who are going to be a positive, voice in your head too. I mean, I think everybody feels it when they're around that negative person. It's just draining, you know? A lot of times it's like, surround yourself with people who are going to talk to you like you would talk to yourself if you were going to like, how am I going to get better is how those people talk to you is like how you want to talk to yourself.
Yeah.
Be around those people that are going to be positive. Be around those people who are going to lift you up. And even on the spiritual side of things, man, I've been a Christian since 2010. You know, and a big part of being in pro ball, there's a lot of temptations to do things that aren't right. And I think being around those guys that, like I said, are going to call you out and say, hey, man, you're going down the wrong path here.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I want to be that guy for other people as well.
You know, and that's one of the reasons why, and we'll wrap it up here, that's one of the reasons why me and Ian started this Doubted Athletes.
Yeah.
Ian was recently saved 2 Fridays ago or a couple Fridays ago, which is crazy. It's awesome.
That is awesome.
And we want to also bring that to the table, right? If you need to talk, not that we know everything at all, we're learning.
Yeah.
But we got people that can help. We've got pro guys, we've got preachers, we got whatever you need. Right. We want to be there for you. We don't want to be like we talked about it in our first one. We don't want to be the big time company or get big time company where we don't respond, right? So we want to help people in all aspects. And I think that's a huge aspect of the grind is having God on your side to somebody to talk to, right? Because we talk about like, sometimes you don't want to talk to your wife about something, right? Like you don't want to bother her with something like that, even though she's here for you. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a you thing, right?
Right.
Or your dad or your mom or your uncle or whatever. You want it. It's just you. And that's a gateway to talk to somebody that obviously is going to help you. Right. So anyway, I appreciate you coming on, man. It was really fun. It was awesome.
Dude.
Learning your story, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Till next time.
See y'all.